Come, come, ye saints, no toil nor labor fear, but with joy wend your way.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Valentine's Day, special edition of Mormon Stories podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn, and we're at KRCL Studios in Salt Lake City. Thanks to Troy Williams. Again on Valentine's Day 2013, and we have with us two very special guests. We have Laurel and Josh Weed. Laurel is also known as Lolly. I'm so happy to have you guys here on Mormon Stories. I've been wanting to interview you guys for a long time, and so thanks for coming.
Our pleasure. Yeah. We're excited to be here.
All the way from Washington.
That's right.
Yeah. So Josh and Lolly sort of hit the Mormon consciousness around, what was it, June of 2012?
June 7th.
Yeah, June 7th?
Mm-hmm.
When Josh came out publicly as a gay, believing LDS man, father of three, married to Lolly, in what is sort of termed in the academic world as a mixed orientation marriage, which is a marriage where one of the members of the marriage is heterosexual and the other is, in Mormon vernacular, same-sex attracted, or elsewhere homosexual or gay or lesbian. So this created quite a bit of talk and conversation. And a lot of it, I think, has been constructive, where people want to understand. Some are confused, some are angry, some are excited, some feel validated. Mm-hmm. And I'm just delighted to be able to give you guys a chance to tell your stories here on Mormon Stories. And sort of clarify what you were and aren't, what you are saying, what you're not saying, what your background is.
Right.
I also mentioned that this is sort of a co-branded podcast with another podcast that we do called Gay Mormon Stories. Sometimes we kind of share programming, but I also want to mention the good work that the folks are doing there. Okay, so to begin with, I guess I just wanted to start like we always start on Mormon Stories, with a little bit of your background. So Josh, why don't you start? Just tell us a little bit about your family heritage and where the church comes into that.
Family heritage, okay. Well, we're going way back. So yeah, I'm a multi-generational LDS person. I don't really have any notables in my past. Irish and Swedish is where I come, where my family hails from, and so yeah, probably 6 or 7 generations, something like that. I'm a horrible person that I don't know the answer to that question.
It's fine, not at all.
Clearly, family history has not been touched as much as it should be. But
you're raised LDS?
Raised LDS in Kearns, Utah. I was born in Provo. My parents met at BYU, kind of a very traditional story. And then they moved to Kearns when I was about 4, and my dad started teaching seminary for what was then CES. And so raised in the church, and when I was 16, moved from Kearns, Utah to Portland, Oregon, and our stories overlap. Like, it's almost impossible not to kind of intertwine the stories. So in Kearns, Lolly and I met in Kearns. My dad was the bishop of our ward when I was 7, and her dad was his counselor all 5 years that they were in together. So they're really good friends, and we met then, elementary school, knew each other, not too well, because we're like 7, but but then in junior high we started to get to know each other a little bit more, and her family moved to Portland, Oregon when we were both in junior high, and my family ended up moving to the same exact suburb of Portland, Oregon, like a year and a half later.
And there was no job connection?
No job connection, total serendipity, total
This is
fate.
divinely inspired from the beginning.
Right. This is how we view it, honestly. It is how we look at it.
And is it okay if I call you Lolly?
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.
So any quick reflections on that time?
Oh, growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember life without Josh.
Right.
Like, he's always been in my life. And we lived on the same street in Utah, and then we both moved to Portland, and he's just always been there.
For better or worse.
Yeah, so obviously we were both raised LDS since we grew up in the same ward.
And you met at what age?
I was 3.
Yeah, he's
She
3, I
was
was like
4.
4.
And your earliest memories are what age, do you think?
Of life?
Of
Or
Being
each
together,
other?
of knowing each other, yeah.
she has an earlier one than me.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's my memory or my best friend's memory, but we
Right.
talked about just when he moved in, me and my best friend were out on my front porch, and up walks this little boy, 2 little
Towhead.
boys holding hands.
He's holding hands with my brother.
his little brother.
Like knee-high, tube socks.
And my friend's like, who is that new boy? So that was how I first met
That's
Josh
the memory.
as a little 3-year-old. Although I wonder why you were walking up the street as a 3-year-old.
I don't know. Yeah.
So
Lenient parents, I guess.
And Josh, what are your first memories of Lolly?
I remember Lolly. I remember just almost like the concept of Lolly. She was older. She was a grade ahead of me, and she was popular and even in elementary school. And I just remember probably one of my first actual like visceral memories of her was her giving a talk when we were really young. I was probably 9 or 10, and she was 11 or 12.
I would have had to have been 12.
Yeah, and I remember just being impressed by her articulateness, and some of the things that she said really kind of touched me even then at that point. And so
At what age did you guys become friends?
junior high, like a couple of years after that, I sat down next to her when I was in 8th grade at the lunch table. She was the student body president of our junior high. Yes,
Oh yeah,
it's
my claim to fame
it's
there.
pretty intense. And so I sat next to her, and we kind of became friends. And we had done we served at a wedding together like a year or so before that, and had gotten along really well, enjoyed each
Had
other's
fun
company,
together.
so.
Yeah.
And Lolly, what did the church mean to you growing up?
It meant a lot to me. My parents did a great job of just being good examples to me, but I didn't feel forced to do anything. And I just was one of those kids that was very aware of things, and I remember hearing the phrase like, I know this is the only true church, and being very concerned because my grandparents went to a different church. They were Mormon, but my concept was the building itself was the true church. And so I was worried, and then, talking to my mom about that, and her saying, no, it's all, the LDS faith. They're just different buildings. And so I was always listening, always paying attention, and it was very important to me from a young age to understand things for myself and to not take anybody's word. I wanted to know for myself, and so it's always been important to me. My faith has been basically who I am, and I really feel like my parents were a lot of that, just because they were really supportive and very real with me all the time, and so I felt free to kind of explore and ask questions.
Nice. How about you, Josh?
Similar, very important to me. And it's interesting that, because the talk that I remember Lolly giving was a talk where she explained how she had developed a portion of her testimony of the church, and I remember being really impressed by the certainty with which she spoke and the spirit with which she spoke, and it was one of the first times that I was like, I kind of want to know that too, I don't know if I was as aware, as cognizant of what was going on around me, and that was one of my first moments of kind of wanting to develop something for myself in terms of comprehension of what's going on around me. And so, but yeah, always very important to me, and an integral part of my growing up, and it was good, largely a positive component of my upbringing. My parents were, our parents have very similar styles in that they were, there were expectations, but they were very they allowed us liberty to explore ideas and do what we wanted to do, always with a very supportive backdrop, but never any pressure or never any kind of pushing us in any direction, which was helpful. So,
When do you think you gained your testimony by? What age?
Differing levels over time.
Yeah.
But like 17 is when I read the Book of Mormon for the first time, and really kind of like started getting into it, and I don't know, there were traces of it, but also like I remember it as a sophomore going to seminary and being in seminary. My dad was a seminary teacher, and I remember listening to my seminary teacher and being like, this is total balderdash. Like, my dad is totally confused, So, like there's a process. I don't know if I can define a specific moment of certitude, but
for sure.
But yeah.
So when did you first kind of notice your attractions, and how did you process that as you were? Usually it happens during kind of puberty for many people. How did you start experiencing that, and what was it like to be Mormon, believing, have your dad as a seminary teacher, and you're starting to feel attractions?
So I was, I had like some really early fantasy like memories at age 5, but nothing like set in stone. I can just retrospectively look back and be like, oh yeah, that existed, But the first, like you pointed out, it's kind of, the onset of puberty is when one begins to have those sexual stirrings, and that was exactly it for me. Age 12, around there. I remember going to a maturation clinic, which is like where they go, in 6th grade, and you go with your parents, and they're like, this is what will happen, and I'll, explain it in detail. And so I had been anticipating developing feelings for girls because that's what was scripted. That's what I was told would happen. And so there was a period of time where where the thing for guys was happening, but I just thought it was incidental, maybe. I was just waiting for the real deal to kick in, and then at around age 13, I realized, like, oh wait, this is the thing for girls is not going to happen, and these feelings that I have for guys are absolutely real, and kind of the replacement. It's what my body apparently is doing, and so.
So there's this term in psychology, ego-syntonic versus ego-dystonic. Ego-syntonic means it feels right, it feels natural, it feels like a part of you, and it's almost one with who you are. Ego-dystonic is like, wait a minute, why is this happening? This isn't me, I don't want this to be happening. Are you saying it was kind of ego-dystonic?
It was definitely ego-dystonic, and I don't know if that's because of the cultural, situation that I found myself in. I have no idea if it would have felt dystonic in a different environment,
right.
But for sure, where I was, it did not jive with the expectations that I had for myself, nor with the outside expectations, nor just with my internal kind of what I anticipated for my future, and So
you were just saying, what's going on here? How do I get rid of this? I don't want this.
I wasn't at that point so like, let's get this out of here, but it was more just like, oh wow, okay, so this is happening, and it wasn't pleasant, it wasn't like a pleasant realization. It was a troubling realization. So it was something that, it was confusing, which I guess makes sense, because every cultural cue, both ecclesiastical and secular, just every cultural cue is indicating that things will be one way, and then it's this other thing, and so it's weird. It's a very weird feeling, very disconcerting. So.
Okay. So from 13 to whatever age, how did you deal with it?
So when I was 13, I told my dad.
You just came out to him?
I came out to him.
Had you heard what gay was, or had you seen it on TV?
Apparently, I had some conception, because I self-identified as gay even then, even in that conversation, and so I must have had some awareness, though I can't cite where that came from. But and he was, so at that time he was in the stake presidency, and he was a seminary teacher, and but his career before that, he was a social worker. He got his degree in social work, and he had worked for social services, and he had done some work in sexuality, and so he was he responded very well.
Not easily fazed.
He was not going to be fazed by me sitting down and telling him.
I'm just surprised you weren't too scared to even tell him. Like, so many people come out. I think the average age that we've found in our data, self-reporting, is around 22, 23,
right. I've seen
where LDS people
data.
come out.
Yeah.
So 13 seems extraordinarily early.
Yeah.
If you knew
I don't
his
know what
dad,
to attribute that to.
His dad is very easy to talk to,
Right.
and I think you felt very comfortable.
And my dad had systematically fostered an environment where I would feel comfortable talking about sexual issues. So there was a long period of me, like, I didn't consciously do this, but looking back, I think that what I was doing was testing the water. So I'd take him downstairs and be like, okay, I heard this word at, such and such, what is it? And he'd just tell me what it was, and
You were kind of feeling him out a little bit?
Yeah, I think I was just testing the waters and seeing how it would go, and must have been subconsciously, but yeah. And so when the time came that I was ready to have that conversation, I knew that it was a safe thing to do, and that he would respond well.
And he said?
He said several things. He said that, I'm trying to remember there's like various things. First, he responded by saying that he wasn't totally surprised, because he knew me, and I had some kind of effeminate tendencies, and not saying that that's even correlated always, but he had just he just knew me as his child, and so he was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes some sense. And he was very validating of what I was saying. He did not question what I was asserting at all. He did not try and indicate that it was a phase, or he didn't doubt what I was saying in the least. I'm trying to remember, at the fireside that we were just at, he said that he did say something that, do you remember what I'm thinking about?
He said that he was trying to kind of understand where you were coming from, and he said, oh yeah, no, I totally get it, because I can identify with you, because if I were to do what I would want to do sexually all the time, I'd be out sleeping with like 4 or 5 women, so I have to suppress my sexuality too. And then Josh...
Right, and my response was like, no, like, this is so much deeper than that, like, this is so much broader than that. And so yeah.
And I think he said, when you said, Dad, do you realize that if I'm gonna stay in the church, I will never be able to fulfill this sexual desire. So it is not like you,
right.
Because you at least have Mom,
Right.
And so he said it was kind of like
like,
you're teaching me right now,
right.
Something I had not even thought of.
Right. But then the kind of culmination of the conversation was that he verbalized that he would love me no matter what I chose to do. Which, pat that guy on the back. Like, seriously, it was like, I 100% needed to hear that, especially at that point, because I was obviously just starting my journey, and I had no idea what it would entail, and having that knowledge kind of in the back of my mind was really important, so that I didn't feel pressured to do anything that didn't feel right to me. And so,
What year was this?
1993, it would have been, maybe 94. Yeah.
Okay. So, how did adolescence go after that? Did you
Sucked.
sucked?
Oh yeah.
Why?
I was bullied in junior high pretty extensively. I wasn't like flamingly kind of homosexual, but I definitely had effeminate characteristics. There's this classic footage that has been shown on some shows where it's a birthday party and I do like the Vogue, like the Madonna. I don't,
Vogue pose.
a strike and a pose. So there were definitely, and I played the violin, and wasn't into sports and liked words. And, it was just not a recipe for like awesomeness. It was, it was rough, and there were some definite dark moments of some pretty severe bullying, actually. Yeah, and so. It was not awesome. My junior high was not great. High school, I moved. In the move, I gained a bunch of weight, so I was really insecure, and really didn't have many awesome years. Like, I didn't have a year that was like this prime moment of goodness. I had some good things going. My family was really supportive. I had some good friendships and stuff, but largely it was a difficult time of my life, for sure.
Were you ever attracted to a friend, or did you ever consider having a relationship, or?
I did not
with
really.
the
I
guy?
did not really consider having a relationship. I did not really have any opportunities like that present themselves. Like I said, I had gained weight, especially by the time I was like in high school. So, and I had like really weird hair and wore like, I look back at pictures, I'm like, what was I doing? Like, I was like, I did not get the stereotypical style thing, and obviously that's totally stereotyped, but I make fun of myself as, not having that talent. But yeah, so I did not, and I didn't really have a lot of guy friends at the time. So I didn't have a situation where I could really crush on someone that I was close to. They were more distant kinds of crushes. So yeah.
Did you ever, and this might extend through your mission,
Sure.
did you ever try and develop a relationship with Heavenly Father, with God, to say, hey, take this away? What can I do to take it away? What can I make it to go away?
I did not have, I feel like I was really lucky in a lot of ways, and that's one of them. This is not to say that I did not have some expectation that it would be taken away, because I went in, I'd had, I would say it was reparative therapy, just knowing what I know about therapy, but it was not slated as that. It was through LDS Family Services. So I had therapy that was founded on the idea that eventually it would go away if I did certain things over time, and that was what leaders said. The first bishop that I spoke to literally did not believe that I was gay. This is when I was 16, and he would not believe it. He refused to believe that what I was saying was true, and that was really hard for me. And I remember getting into a fight with him, actually, like a verbal altercation.
With the bishop?
Yeah. I view this as having been very good. It ended up working out well, because my attitude at the time was that I was going to trust my leader and do what he said, even though he was straight up wrong, and just trust that the Lord would make up the difference. And that happened in multiple ways as I did that. So I can't even remember what you asked, so I'm getting tangential here.
No, it's good. So you never tried to talk to God or get God to take it away or make a bargain?
Definitely, I'm not going to say I never said a prayer of help me out, like relieve me of this. But I did not enter into what I would view as some kind of pathological, performance-based, please, like expectation of like, please take this from me. If you love me, you will remove this from, if I'm worth something to you, God. It was never tied to my self-worth. So does that make sense? The clarification makes sense?
And the reparative therapy, or the therapy that you went through with LDS Family Services, the goal was to make it go away?
The implicit goal
and how'd that work?
It totally doesn't.
Doesn't
work.
Or didn't for you, or doesn't at all?
I am going to speak broadly and say that my opinion is that it doesn't at all. I can for sure say that it did not for me.
What types of things did you try?
It was like, I'm trying to even remember. It was weak. Like, it was not like I was seeing Nicolosi and getting like straight up reparative therapy. It was more like just a diluted kind of like, everyone has the expectation that this is going to go away if you're obedient and don't ever masturbate and stop having those pesky fantasies about God, and live righteously and do good things. Like, so I can't even remember specifically what he had me do.
But you tried.
But I tried. I tried to live correctly. I tried to do everything that I could do. And I definitely did. There were years where I had an expectation that if I, like went on a mission and got married and did everything right, that maybe probably it could go away. Like it was kind of like, yeah, like it was within the realm of possibility that it could go away, because that's what everyone was kind of like saying. So
you were hoping for that.
Yeah, I hadn't pinned my hopes on it, but it was definitely a hope that I had. So
Lolly, when did you first find yourself liking Josh and being attracted to him? And do you remember?
Yeah, that was it was a long time after we were friends. So
late in the process.
Yeah, we were friends. He told me that he was gay. We were just friends, and it took years for me to even think about entering into like a romantic relationship with him. It was a very long process.
Was it kind of friends pre-mission?
Oh yeah.
And then post-mission?
No.
Should we go through the storyline?
Yeah.
Okay. So out at 16. You can go.
He told me at 16. I was the first person he told besides his parents. And he felt comfortable telling me because he knew that my grandpa was gay and had left my grandma. And so he thought, okay, here's someone that is at least, knows what being gay is. And so he told me, and there was a lot of emotion that I had when he told me. I just felt really bad for him, thinking, what are you supposed to do? And feeling like, what are your resources? And asking him, what are you going to do? What's your plan? And so then just hours and hours and years of us just talking about like what he wanted out of life and things like that. I never thought it would happen with me. I mean, that first conversation, he said he wanted to get married and go on a mission. And so I remember thinking, okay, maybe, yeah, that could be a possibility. And so at times we'd talk like, well, how is that going to work? What kind of a woman would marry you?
It's true. This was the nature of, we're youth, like we're 16, 17, 18.
And I'd say stuff, like, well, obviously you're going to have to marry someone that doesn't care about sex, libido. And he was like, whoa, no, I think that would be disastrous. Right. I think I need to find someone that is going to want it, or else we're going to be in a bad situation. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe. It was just all
she was always saying, like, heck no. Yeah. Because she was very much looking forward to the sexual part of like her parents were really good at like
They
not
did a
shaming
great
sexuality at all.
job about
And so,
teaching us like this is good, you're gonna like it, you know.
And so,
And
So you were looking forward to that.
yeah,
Right.
it was like the highlight. In fact, I was not your typical girl. Like, I was not planning my wedding. I didn't care what my colors were. I had always planned out my honeymoon. Like, this is where we're going to go. This is what we're going to do. Like, I was looking forward to that. Like, consummation of marriage. Who cares what my wedding dress looks like? I mean,
Right.
I think I was abnormal that way. And so I was like, well, we are not going to be a good fit.
right.
But, I mean, we got to know each other really, really well. And
Best friends.
Yeah.
Became, you know, very close.
and there were times where we'd talk like, well, maybe something would happen. And I was like, no. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Then he started dating my best friend. And then he told my best friend that he was gay. And when she was okay with it, I was very surprised. Like, how can you be okay with the fact that your boyfriend is gay? Like, that's so weird. But I really respected her. And so it made me step back and look at him in a different way, because he'd start talking about their relationship. And I was like, oh, you're an awesome boyfriend. Like, he would do fun things and like be spontaneous and things that I was looking for in like a boyfriend and a future husband. And so I guess eventually, spontaneously, I ended up just saying to him that he was everything that I wanted in a future husband, all except for the gay thing. And he was like, "Are you serious?" And I mean, I really had to stop and think, yes, you are seriously the person that is Josh. I mean,
And we had spent years, because part of our friendship, aside from talking about this issue, was like talking about her with all her.
He'd analyze my
boys.
boyfriends.
We'd have, and
Sure.
so she had lists of qualities that she wanted, and like, so it was a very culminating moment, because we had spent a long time talking about about her and what she wanted in her future too, and so this was a really kind of like huge moment where she said, like, all those lists and all that stuff we've talked about, like, it's you know,
you.
like, I've realized after all of these years that you fit all of those characteristics. Why am I fighting this so hard, you know?
But even then, like, he was like, you have to decide if I'm worth it to you. And I remember him specifically saying that, like, is all of the good, everything you love about me worth taking, like, my challenges and everything that's going to come up from, you know, this issue of him being homosexual? Like, am I worth it to you? And I honestly couldn't answer that at the time. I was like, I don't know.
And what age was this?
You were 19.
So pre-mission still.
Yeah, he hadn't gone on a mission
Okay,
yet.
so you realized he might be the one
Yeah.
by
Yes.
before his mission time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very confusing, too.
Yeah, and like such a weird time to have that happen. It felt very like, what the, you know, like I had come home from college to get ready to go on my mission, and then all of this kind of like just organically manifested itself, and yet I was leaving, and there was almost this like, we're not even supposed to be talking, you know, like this is
If
like
we were going to be good, we wouldn't be,
yeah.
you know, being
So,
steady dating or anything. And I
Right.
just felt like there's no one to talk to about this. Like, I
Right.
wasn't going to go to my friends and be like, I love Josh, all these great qualities, but he's gay, so what do I do? Like,
Right.
it was like,
it's not
we
a lot
weren't
of places
talking
to,
about
like,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was confusing. I was talking to my parents about it because they knew about
Right.
Josh. And so they were the only ones I really could talk to.
And Josh, had you developed any sexual or romantic feelings for Lolly by this point?
At that
Erotic,
point.
whatever.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. It was, it's so hard to describe this because, but yeah, it is not the same as infatuation. You know, like the infatuation that I feel for guys where it's just like very chemical and potent. It's different. It was different than that. But it had similar characteristics. Like when we first kind of established like, yeah, we're feeling this. Like it was really a cool time period, and there were some butterflies in the stomach and stuff, and it was, yeah, yeah, so to answer your question, yes, at that time that was happening.
But you're saying you have experienced those romantic feelings for men, and it's a different quality and maybe in some ways stronger.
Definitely stronger. The human potential for infatuation is one of the strongest forces I know of. I mean, I see clients in my office constantly whose marriages are on the brink of crumbling because one of the partners has accidentally developed those feelings for an outside unit. And it is an addiction. Like, it is very potent.
It is.
There's some potency there.
And you experienced this when?
When did I experience?
For a man.
At differing points of my journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like pre-mission, during mission, post-mission,
Not during
post-marriage?
mission. Not during mission.
Okay. So it wasn't an
But-
issue during mission.
No, thankfully, no. But yeah, at differing points.
In adolescence or adulthood?
More adulthood, like in fact, I was just reading my journal recently from about the time I was 18. And it was right around that point that I started. I recently read that I was writing about how I was like, this is feeling, I had a crush on someone in my ward, and it was really powerful. And I was like, this is more intense than it ever has been, you know? So there was something with age. The feelings were intensifying as I got older and became an adult. And at that time, this is about 18, right before I started college, that was the main period where I was like, listen, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I don't know which direction I'm going to go because this is feeling really, really intense. This is all, we're not being chronological. This is before what we just talked about.
Sure.
So we were discussing this together as friends. Like, he's talking about his crushes with me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's really
I'm
rough.
processing this stuff. But yeah, at that point during that summer before my freshman year of college, it was kind of like, it felt really more powerful than it had ever felt, and it was not something that could be easily brushed aside. You know, it was like, if I'm being real with myself, this is like, it's powerful stuff, and I've got to really evaluate what I want for myself. And so,
Anything, I don't want to just skip over the mission, but anything significant as it relates to any of this happen on your mission?
just male integration. I had missed it my entire adolescence. I was like not really, I did not get the social cues in terms of masculinity, and I had never had friendships with men, and I felt very, very scared to go on a mission because it was like, it felt very much like the world of men, you know, and I had never experienced that and didn't know if I fit in there at all, and had not really had any friendships with other guys that were, I had one roommate that I was close to, but beyond that. And so it was just really scary, and then I went and kind of submerged myself in it, and it ended up being amazing. And so,
Had a good mission experience.
really positive. Large, you know, hard things, but overall very positive.
Were you avoiding relationships with men because you didn't want to become attracted to one?
Well, let me think before I answer that. I don't think so. It was more that I had no idea how to do it. I had literally just not been given the social cues. And also it was like a lot of internal shame about my own masculinity, which I don't know how or if that's related to gayness. I'm not sure. It could be that it's not. But yeah, so issues surrounding my own kind of like worthiness as a male, worthiness to be a friend. And these are themes that I still kind of have to work with even in my current life. But
never a fear that you would become attracted.
That was never a motivator. I mean, I didn't base any relationship decisions on that, which is not to say that that wasn't something that crossed my mind, because of course it did from time to time, but it wasn't like it wasn't a deep fear at all for me. So.
Okay, so how'd you get from returning home to your mission to actually taking the plunge?
Wow, well, it's a short story. So mission ends, I'm walking onto the airplane, And by the way, they had given my mission papers back to me, probably because it mentioned that I was homosexual, and maybe they didn't want it archived or whatever. And I saw at that moment that I was supposed to have been called on a stateside mission. That's what they had checked. But in fact, I went foreign. I went to Venezuela. So that was like this big moment of like, whoa, that's amazing, you know? And getting on the plane to go home, and there was a guy that came up to the 8 of us, and there was a problem with our passports, and those of us who had stickers on our passports got on a plane and flew home, and those with stamps were thrown in jail.
Oh.
Yeah, so we got taken in a paddy wagon, and, you know, thrown in the local kind of like jail unit there. We were in jail overnight is all, and they let us out of jail the next day, but they kept us in the country for what ended up being a month. Yeah, of like thinking we were going to leave every single day, and this torturous process. So obviously thoughts of this, you know, like crossed my mind at that time, and I had some time to evaluate things and evaluate my priorities and whatnot. Finally, eventually got home, and Wally was there, and we started talking, and things were pretty much exactly where they were when I left. And she had not waited for me. Like, when I left, it was very much like, if this is supposed to work, it will work, and if not, you know, good luck with the guy that you find, and best wishes. So we get home, and it was, she had served a mission, ended up serving a mission, and so yeah, it was good.
Where'd you serve, Ollie?
Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
Spanish speaking.
Nice.
Yeah, so we both speak Spanish, which is fun. So it was, when I got home, everything kind of weighed on me pretty heavily, and I'm going to say this and it will sound stupid, but there was 1 week of utter turmoil and indecisiveness, and I kind of knew what I needed to do, but it was terrifying. I mean, totally petrifyingly scary.
What were your biggest worries or fears? Do you remember? What were you scared?
That it was wrong, and that I was making a mistake. It was a very confusing time, so I don't know if I was thinking very clearly about like actual I wasn't thinking like, there were no like, the thoughts were less concrete and more emotionally based. But yeah, and then I had a very kind of specific experience that let me know that I should ask her to marry me, and I did, and subsequently felt complete and total peace. Like
spiritual experience.
Radiating the peace. Yeah, spiritual experience. Kind of.
Kind of.
It's different than any other spiritual experience I had ever had or since have had. It's completely unique.
For you, it was a clear communication?
Very clear.
That said,
ask her to marry you. Literally, those words. Twice, because I asked again. I asked for a repeat, because I was like, did that really just happen? And then it happened again.
And is that how Heavenly Father has communicated?
Totally different than my standard, and my standard is like, how would you describe it? She's very like big spiritual moment of answer, and I'm very like progressive spiritual culmination answer kind of thing, where and events kind of like align and stuff. That's kind of my modus operandi with the Spirit. But
for you, this was a very clear, specific,
very
concrete
clear,
communication.
Yeah, undeniably clear. Yeah.
How about for you, Lolly?
Oh, when I knew I was going to marry him?
Yeah.
It was before my mission, actually, and it was very unexpected. And I have always been kind of obsessed with who I was going to marry. Like, even as a third grader, I was praying for my husband and please bless him wherever he is and help us find each other. I mean, I was very romantic that way, and I continued to pray for my husband throughout high school and.
A generic husband.
Yes, I didn't know who he was or anything.
So sweet. That is so sweet. I love that.
It was always very, my parents had such a sweet marriage, and I wanted that. Like, I looked around my ward, I saw marriages that weren't happy, people that I really respected, and I thought, how did they end up together and now they're so miserable? Because they're great people. Like, I did not want that to happen to me. So I was always praying for my husband. And one night, it was actually the day that I had gone through the temple for the first time. And I was very spiritually high. Like, I loved the experience. And I went and was saying my evening prayer, and I went to say the thing that I had always said was like, please bless my future husband. And it just like came to me very strong, like, you already know who your future husband is. And I knew that I was going to marry Josh.
Pray for him by name.
Yeah, and I thought, Josh is the man that I'm going to marry. And it was very powerful to me. And so the next day, I almost was like expecting everyone to know. Like, I'm sure everyone in the world received this revelation like I did. Like my parents, like I woke up at breakfast and was like, all right. So and I was expecting a letter, because he's on his mission at the time, like expecting a letter from him saying like, so I know that, you know, he didn't get it. And I was like, well, I'm obviously not going to tell him. He's on a mission and he needs to know that for himself. So I kind of just carried it with me.
But your mom figured it out.
Yeah, my mom did. Like, just one random day we were driving and she looked at me out of the blue and said, you're going to marry Josh, aren't you? I was like, Mom? And she's like, I know you. She's like, and you have been totally calm and peaceful. And I know it's because you think you're going to marry Josh. You've received an answer, haven't you? I mean, my mom's really in tune with her kids. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to marry him. And so she said, okay, I'm going to go tell your dad. And so she went and said, Mike, get used to the idea because she's marrying that boy. And so they were supportive ever since then. But I mean, I knew he was who I was supposed to marry.
And they never freaked out and said, don't do it, we're scared?
No. In fact, that was it when my mom said she's received a revelation. Like, she has received spiritual confirmation that Josh is the man she's supposed to marry. And they have always trusted my spirituality. And so my dad was like, okay, then that's who she's supposed to marry. So they believed me and trusted me. They had concerns before that, for sure, that they talked to me about. Like, my mom was like, is this what you really want? You know, and she obviously saw my grandpa leaving my grandma and what it did to my grandma. And so it's not like we're unaware of the consequences. But she was very, after that, they never questioned it.
Mm-hmm. And so he gets home. Josh, you struggle for a week.
Yeah.
And then you pop.
I was laying on my parents' couch. We were laying together. Bad. We were laying side by side on the couch. Inappropriate. And and I asked her right there in that moment.
And I, of course, knew what my answer was.
Right,
so.
you already knew. There was no hesitation.
And Lolly, were you attracted to him?
It took a while. It was a process for me. Like, he was not my ideal guy. But
especially at the time we fell in love, I had gained a considerable amount of weight. I weighed almost 300 pounds.
Towards the end of your mission?
No, right before I left.
When we fell in love.
Stress eating, like
yeah.
a mother. Like, I was like eating a lot, and I gained like 60 pounds.
Yeah, but that was when we really fell in love, was when he was like at his biggest
apex of weight.
And so he was like, why do you even love me? And I'm like, you're amazing. Like, I love the person that you are. And so, and I think there's something to be said about that. Like, when you really love a person, they become beautiful to you, you know? And he was, you know, then I started to become attracted to him. But then I came home from his mission, he lost 100 pounds, and I was like, whoa, I totally scored, because he looked different. I was already in love with him. So, yeah, I was attracted to him at that point. But it was a process, so.
You fell in love with his soul. Mm-hmm. Same with you, Jim?
Yeah, and so I think that's where, when he talks about attraction, I get where he's coming from, because I mean, obviously not. I mean, it's obviously different, but I can understand that feeling of falling in love with someone for who they are, and then the attraction comes, because that's what happened.
So instead of it being this attraction born out of carnal, physical sensuality and eroticism or whatever, it's this falling in deep, emotional, spiritual love and connection,
Right.
and then attraction. I imagine that's a different type of attraction.
I would imagine so. Yeah. Don't have much to compare it to, but I would think it is.
Right. Right.
Well, I don't think it's that different from couples who get through like the period, the infatuation period. This is all theoretical, and I have no like data to back this up at all. But I think that couples who get through the infatuation period and have that juncture where they either like fall in love with each other for real, like in a different way, or kind of split ways. I think it's similar to that secondary connection that is developed over time. I think there is some similarity between what we have to that kind of connection. But I guess. I'm not sure on that. It's just what I suspect. So.
Okay. But before we jump in to talking about how you make the marriage work, I want to talk briefly about, Josh, your views on same-sex attraction, homosexuality, and Lolly, if there's anything you want to add in terms of your opinion, jump in. There are many stereotypes or theories about what causes or doesn't cause same-sex attraction. So I just kind of want to go through a few on the list.
Okay.
And see if you have opinions about it for others and then for yourself.
Okay.
So the first natural one is biological. That there's some biological thing going on for yourself, for others. What's your view on that?
Unknown, but I suspect that yes, in general.
In general, and for you
And for me.
specifically. So you feel like there's a decent probability that there's a biological component.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's my suspicion.
And for you, was it a choice?
Oh, heck no.
Not even.
Yeah, not remotely. Yeah.
Okay. Some say it has something to do with your relationships with your parents, that, overbearing mother, absent father. For you?
For me, no.
I guess that would make you have to speak ill of your parents, or
Right, no, which I'd be fine doing. No worries on that front. But I have to qualify my answer. For me, there is a lack of connection between my father and me that we both can verbalize and know is there. Like, we have a very good relationship, as evidenced by our communication over the years, but we both feel something is missing. But chicken or egg,
Right.
I don't know.
and just so my audience understands a little bit, what I think you mean by chicken and egg is your relationship missing something because your dad, noticed in you from an early age that you were same-sex attracted, and that might have made him uncomfortable,
Right.
or a little bit standoffish,
Right.
or did the same-sex attraction develop because your
of
dad
that,
was?
Right.
And
No way to know.
no way to know,
Yeah.
and that's what makes that theory in any
Tenuous.
direction
Yeah.
problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or it also could be not that he did not connect with me because I was gay. It also could be because I was gay, I did not connect to him
Right.
with my own gender identity. Is also a possibility.
Okay.
So,
Okay. It's a personal question. Answer it if you feel comfortable. Some say it has to do with abuse or sexual exploration or porn or masturbation, or I'll just use offensive term, sexual deviance.
Okay.
That leads to it.
Okay. I will systematically go through. I was not sexually abused or abused in any other way. And those other things were not causal at all, though some of them factor into my development.
Which is kind of normal for all kids,
most kids, yeah.
Some people think of same-sex attraction as an illness or a disease, or when they talk about it like it's some type of affliction that one needs to be cured from. How do you conceptualize it for you?
That's a hard one. I honestly am not. Maybe I don't know exactly how I conceptualize it.
Yeah.
I want you to jump in and save
I
me.
don't know, because
here's what I'm thinking, and thoughts are always in development, right? I might change this over time.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of curability, no, I don't think that there is a way to change this circumstance. Whether or not I think it is I don't have the language because I want to say pathology, but that's not the right word. I do view it as something different than what nature intended for a male of this species to experience in terms of sexuality, like for me it does seem to be that way, and at the same time it has brought a lot of I think positive components to my life, and I think even my personality and creativity, and there's a lot that my life contains that I think is somehow correlated to the fact that I'm gay, that I think I would be missing if that had not been the case. So I don't feel like I'm explaining myself very well at all.
You're not comfortable with affliction or
Right,
disease,
right?
but you're not comfortable saying it's awesome, A-OK,
Right. Yeah.
normal the way it should be.
Right.
Some who just might believe in the theory of evolution would say that actually nature did design, same-sex attracted people into our communities for perhaps very healthy reasons. Maybe they made good pastors. Maybe they made good, artists.
Yeah.
Maybe they were good caretakers.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility for you?
I guess it's a possibility.
So
Where my brain
natural in that way, not
Right.
normal in the sense that it's the average experience, but natural.
Where my brain goes with that is, I don't think when we're talking on a purely biological level, and I'm not a biologist, so I don't know what I'm talking about really, but I don't think when we're talking on a purely biological level, biology is terribly concerned with someone being able to be a pastor, or or those kinds of issues, and that biology tends to generally deal with propagation of the species, which I think. So I don't know. It is possible, that is a distinct possibility.
There are theories
really
in
have no idea.
social evolution that try and make this
Maybe
explanation.
social evolution.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, that would make probably more sense.
But we're all speculating at this
Right?
point.
Yeah.
So in some ways would you call it a gift in some ways, a blessing?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's who I am, right?
Right.
And I don't know how to tease out the differences of what I would have been otherwise. There's no, and so I do love who I am as a human being, and so yeah, absolutely.
That's great. So I think you've already answered this, but you've actually never tried dating a man or experiencing same-sex love or affection.
No,
It-
not in
Pre-mission, it wasn't a
Right.
possibility. You were married right after your mission.
Right.
So you don't know for sure what that would be like.
I don't. I have a pretty good idea. In the same way that someone who's... there are scenarios in which I think most people have a good idea of what being in love would feel like. I think our imagination capacity has that ability of taking one's... It's not experiential, but it is definitely... You have a pretty good conception of what it would be, but yeah, I don't have any experiential knowledge on that.
Okay. Probably the biggest question that I've received for you has to do with the Kinsey scale. So for those who don't know, a sex researcher, Alfred Kinsey, designed a scale to describe people's sexuality. The scale is 0 to 6. 0 means exclusively other sex attracted, so heterosexual. 6 means exclusively same-sex attracted or homosexual. 3 would be bisexual. I guess my first question is, how do you view the Kinsey scale? And do you believe that bisexuality exists? And what does bisexuality mean to you?
Okay. Wow, I'm going on record. Here we go. I have doubts about both the Kinsey scale as well as, especially in males, bisexuality. I don't have any definitive anything, as I keep repeating. But my gut is that I know for me, and this gets really complex, but so yeah, I think the Kinsey scale definitely serves a purpose and helps give language to these ideas of there being kind of a spectrum and possibility of spectrum and and whatnot. And I think it's useful to have a way to language these things and to have universal terminology. But I don't think it's a perfect scaling system. And one of the things that I do not totally love about it is it does not really very well differentiate between sexual behaviors and sexual attractions, because I view them as very different things. I mean, obviously, my sexual behavior is like one totally different thing than my sexual attractions are, and so I don't think that it has.
You're saying it's
perfect
inadequate?
accuracy.
It's inadequate?
Yeah, maybe it's I guess maybe it's inadequate.
But do you believe there are people who are attracted to both sexes?
I think that is possible. I have not met a lot of men who have legitimately told me, like, in terms of, and I'm talking about gut basic attraction, like two naked bodies, you know, and there's a naked guy and a naked girl, and they are like equally able to get, I mean, I'm going to get really specific, get an erection and have like a sexual experience with with both of those stimuli equally. I don't know if I don't know if I've encountered many people that can say that there's that equality.
So for you, bisexuality is rare.
I think I suspect it's rare.
Okay.
Yeah. In men, I've seen it more in women, for whatever that's worth.
I think women's sexuality is a little more fluid, maybe.
Well, I think, and it's just different in a lot of ways, probably. But yeah. So in terms of me on the Kinsey scale, I think that. Was I saying Kinsey before? Yeah.
I think
I think I was. I don't know what I'm talking about. But in terms of me on the Kinsey scale, I have always self-identified as like it makes people upset when I say this, but especially pre-marriage, I was totally a 6. Like, I mean, there was a level of repulsion to the opposite sex for sure, you know, and so. In terms of like what I am sexually attracted to, like visually, or even other sensorily, like olfactory, you know, like my basic sexual orientation is homosexual, like all the way, you know. Insofar as I can explain it and define it, that is what I would say. I've often wished that, and I hear that maybe there is this kind of mechanism. I've wished that there was some kind of like test where I could have certain, be monitored, and my response could be monitored, and there could be different stimuli, thrust upon me, and they could measure how I'm responding, so that I could just like definitively be like, see, the data says you don't need to worry about it. Like I know what I'm saying is true, and so I haven't found such a test, but maybe it exists.
So in the Nightline interview, I remember them saying, "Are you attracted to women?"
Right.
And you're like, "No."
Yeah.
And then they ask, "Are you attracted to Lolly?"
Yes.
And you're like, "Yes." Is it? But some would say, "How would you know?" Like,
right. How would I know?
How would you know that you? I mean, some would say by definition you're bisexual because you're able to, and I can understand why this question might come out of ignorance, but
sure.
How could you be sexual at all with Lolly if you weren't bisexual? Because sure. That's what bisexuality is.
Right. And that's why I think the Kinsey scale is it's not adequate, because sexual behavior and sexual attraction, I think, are two very distinct things.
So you can be sexually active without being sexually attracted to someone?
I think that sexual behavior can occur in many instances without, there's lots of different scenarios that kind of prove that that's a possibility, and that can and does happen, and so, yeah, that is the case, I think, anyway.
And so what is it that includes your sexual attraction or your ability to be intimate with Lolly that precludes you from saying you also have an attraction to the opposite sex?
I think it's in the fact that it is so Lolly specific. So, You know,
You're lollysexual.
I am lollysexual. That's awesome. Yep. That is my future answer to this question.
I coined that term.
Good work. Yeah, it happened here right
Thank you very
now.
much.
Yeah,
Yep,
that's right.
lollysexual.
I like it.
That's good. Good Valentine's Day word. Love it. Yeah, there's actually some truth to that. Like, it is. It's just her, and it has to do with our relationship and years of knowing each other and being intimate with each other. And I am now, and there is an increase in in my attraction to her specifically. But any other woman, no. And so it's like, and I'm almost like, sometimes I feel hesitant to talk about that in great depth because I feel like it gives fodder to proponents of change therapy who want to like say that sexual orientation is not immutable and is in fact changeable. And I'm like, nah, I don't believe that, you know, that's not my experience. For whatever reason, there is some ability to, on a very individual basis, have some flexibility, at least in my experience. But in terms of actual sexual orientation,
I mean,
not
you
really
you
a
have
shit
said,
ball.
like, if anything were to ever happen to me, you'd be done.
right,
You know.
I'm out. Like,
Really?
I
Yeah.
can't say that for sure. I
mean,
guess
he-
if I got to that point, I would have to
I don't know
evaluate.
what I can say on a podcast, but I mean, you know, he'll say, like, you're the only vagina for me. Like, you know, I'm not going there with
Right,
anybody else.
right.
Like,
And that's my gut feeling, you know. Obviously, it happened once, so I suppose theoretically it could happen again, but I don't want it to.
You think this is sort of a stars aligning kind of thing?
I think it is, in some ways, yeah. I think there's a lot to it, and I think that it is.
and
I think it can be duplicated, but I think it requires a lot of stars aligning to be duplicated. So I think it requires a lot of different factors being in place and the people involved being at a certain state of thought and development, and you know, so
and
were you
it
gonna
takes
say,
a
Lola?
lot of communication. Like, yeah, and if you want to say that's a star aligning or whatever, or if it's a personality, but I mean, we're very committed to each other, and we're willing to be vulnerable and to communicate and to say things that might hurt, to find the truth and to understand each other. And I don't want to sound like we're all special or whatever, but I haven't seen a lot of people that have communicated with each other in the way that we have been able to. And so, I mean, I don't know if that's considered a star aligning, but I don't know of a lot of people that can communicate on
that
that
have
level.
found that, yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that has
found
to be
that.
the soulmate connection of your relationship from your childhood.
right, and the early vulnerability. So I was totally vulnerable with her when I was 16, you know. So
What did that create for you both?
It's
immense
definite
trust.
sense of trust, and like we're in this together. Like I felt
even at that time,
Yeah.
before there was any romantic component, there was definitely a like, we're gonna figure this stuff out.
yeah.
The church and homosexuality, we're gonna figure this out, you know.
And I was very committed to his happiness. Like, I wanted him to be happy. And I mean, there were moments where he's trying to figure out what he wanted for his life, and I knew I was going to support him no matter what he chose. So I think that definitely played a big role in it. It's just trusting each other and genuinely loving each other and wanting what was best for each other. And I feel like genuinely when we put each other's happiness above our own and listen to each other and would be willing to sacrifice anything or do anything. If he asked me to do something, I would do it. And I know if I said, hey, Josh, I need you to do this for me, or I need you to change this for me, he would do it.
Which is part of the trust of, I mean, it's part of the process. It's because you know that they would never ask you to do something that didn't have your and their best interest in mind, you know. So it's just this kind of circular trust thing that, you know, so. 1, 2.
Come, come, ye saints, no toil nor labor fear, but with joy wend your way. Though hard to you this journey may appear, grace shall be as your day. 'Tis better far for us to strive our useless cares from us to drive to the sand joy. Your hearts will swell